Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So last week, Embracer went on another one of their shopping sprees, and I really want to talk about it. I wanted to talk about it last week, but when I started unraveling the ball of yarn that is Lord of the Rings IP ownership, it became a project in and of itself. And then also I thought maybe I could fill the gap by talking about Gamescom Opening Night Live instead, but there wasn't really a whole lot to say about that show, so I'm just going to throw my thoughts about it here at the beginning of the video. Okay, so Gamescom, right? Jeff Keighley, and I don't feel like I'm the only person who feels this way, has never once in his many years of creating video game showcases ever put on a genuinely great showcase. There's been a couple that were decent, but none that were genuinely great. And this one, unfortunately, continues that same trend where I don't feel like I've wasted my time having watched it, but I'm not coming out of it with much to show for it, right? And there's certainly areas in which he improved, right? You know, there are positives about this show. They kept the musical numbers, the weird advertisements, the like celebrity cameos for no reason. They kept all of those to a complete minimum, and I really appreciated that. And there were even a couple of games that I came out of the showcase a little bit more excited for, right? Like Lies of P, I think that's probably the game of the show for everybody. It's if you're not aware of which game that is, it's the one where it's like, if you ever played Bloodborne and you thought, this is good, but I wish instead I was playing as a 4-foot tall Timothy Chalamet, then we found the game for you. It has a lot of that same Bloodborne inspiration, although apparently it's technically not a Souls-like, which I still think in reviews it's absolutely going to be compared to Bloodborne, and probably disfavorably. That being said, it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's dropping day one in Game Pass, which is a huge positive. Really, the only thing that I look at this trailer or the gameplay that they showed of this and nitpick is that it did look pretty choppy, and I don't know if that was the stream that was like, you know, dropping frames or something, or if it was the game itself. I guess we won't know until the game is actually in our hands. But, you know, I guess because it's a Pinocchio game, they might be able to get away with a little bit of weird frame rate issues because they'll be able to be like, oh, they're puppets, they don't move right or something. Like, I don't know, maybe it was intentional. I hope not, but whatever. So that's definitely game of the show. And then the only other one that I'm coming out a little bit happy about game-wise is Gotham Knights. I felt like this was a better than usual showing for Gotham Knights. I feel like pretty much every other time that they've shown it, I have become less and less interested in it. And this trailer definitely solidified it as like, I'm definitely going to play this game, although I am still a little concerned about it. There's something about the way that game looks, and I can't put my finger on it, where it just doesn't feel right. You know, I love the Arkham games. Even Origin, I love. It's the worst of the four, but I still love it. And this looks like it's definitely going to be worse than those four, which is disappointing. But hopefully I'm wrong about that. My overwhelming, the body of the Gamescom, you know, showcase for me was just things that they showed that I didn't really get anything out of. They were games that I'm interested in, but that the showing of them just did nothing for me, like Callisto Protocol, right? I'm very interested in that game. I want to play that game super bad, right? But did I need 5 minutes of not Isaac Clarke feeding not necromorphs into a meat grinder? No. I already know how this game is going to be played. I've played Dead Space before. We've seen it being played before. There are things that you could have shown here, like maybe more of the story, or like, is there a primary antagonist? You know, anything to sort of solidify the world of Callisto Protocol instead of just like, there's monsters, here's gore, would have been more interesting to me, whereas just watching things go into a grinder was just like, cool. I kind of just feel like I'm watching somebody's Let's Play. Like, didn't need that. Kind of the same thing with Hogwarts Legacy. We did get a little bit more story to it. I'm glad that it seems like you're going to be able to be making actual choices in the game. But again, I'm already completely sold on this game. I don't need to see anything more about it necessarily, and I definitely didn't need to see how clunky the combat looks. Dark Tide still looks fantastic. I don't think we got any new information out of this trailer, but it still looks fantastic. I'm really excited to play it. Dead Island 2, I think looks really good. I'm going to play Dead Island 2. I worry a little bit because this trailer and gameplay that they showed felt more irreverent or more comedic than the previous games. And I worry about that because this is not the same creators as the first game, and I hope that they don't look at the occasionally funny moments of Dead Island and be like, it's a comedy game, and then do what happened to Dead Rising between like Dead Rising 1 and 2 and Dead Rising 4, where it just became a complete joke fest and nothing mattered. I'm hoping that's not the direction that they're going, because I'm really sick of people being given somebody else's IP and then turning it into a joke. I'm looking at you, Taika Waititi. And then the only other thing that I'm coming out, kind of positive on is the Genshin update. We already knew that this was coming. We already knew when it was launching. They didn't show us anything new about it, but when it came up on screen, I was like, oh yeah, I need to get back into Genshin. That's a good game. I want to play more of that. Everything else in the showcase was either bad or completely forgettable. Like really generic stuff, like what was it, like Atlas Fallen or something? There was a game that looked like a weird ripoff of like Darksiders or Monster Hunter, and it looked like the most generic thing I've ever seen in my life. Then there was just a lot of bad stuff, right? Like everywhere. That game is for sure going to be like a crypto mining machine, right? Like I'm not the only person who sees that, right? It first of all didn't show anything of the game. We have no idea what that game is. They haven't told us anything about it. The only thing that they leaned their hat on is that it's being made by one of the people who used to make the Grand Theft Auto games, and it's like, I'm sorry, saying that you used to be a part of a team that did good things does not mean that your next thing is going to be good. Like I don't care. I'm sorry. I need to know what this game is before I have literally any level of interest in it. Then there was Dune Awakening, and I was like, oh cool, a Dune game. I really like Dune. And then the trailer didn't tell us anything about it other than that it was in the Dune universe. So I was like, okay, that's kind of a bummer. And then right at the end, they threw up a text block that was like, open world survival MMO. And I was like, a survival game? No, that's not for me. I don't know who that's for, but it's not me. DualSense Edge got a showing. Basically, PlayStation is trying to take the really bad DualSense controller and create a Xbox Elite version of it. And they failed catastrophically. It's customizable, but you can't offset the sticks, so you can't make it good. And the sticks are sold separately, meaning that PlayStation has found a way to sell you a controller that has microtransactions. PlayStation is always going to find a way to make more money. It's wild. It's absolutely wild. Then we got a trailer for The Lords of the Fallen, which is, I guess, a sequel to Lords of the Fallen, the really, really bad Dark Souls ripoff from like the 360. That game was genuinely terrible, and I have no interest whatsoever in a sequel to it. Destiny 2 Lightfall. This trailer looked so bad that at first I thought it was the Fortnite like the Fortnite crossover event. And then when I realized it wasn't that, I thought it was just a ripoff. Like, I thought somebody had just taken, like, general armor ideas from Destiny and created a new game that was, like, legally distinct. And it was not, it was literally not until the second that the Destiny logo popped up on screen that I was like, oh, is this what Destiny is now? Ugh. Sonic Frontiers. Still looks bad. I'm sorry. I know that a lot of people have a lot of nostalgia for Sonic. I don't think Sonic has ever been good, and this doesn't seem like it's going to buck that trend. I do think that it's really funny that in the Sonic Breath of the Wild ripoff, the little stone man that walks around every time he takes a footstep, it makes almost the exact same noise that the Sheikah Slate makes in Breath of the Wild. Like, that's just really wearing your influence on your sleeve there. Goat Sim 3, why do we need a third of these? We didn't need a second of these. Why are we getting a third? Friends versus Friends. It's A furry game with card combat. Could not possibly be less interested, right? High on Life. I was genuinely really excited for this game to drop into Game Pass later this year. But then it got delayed until December, which was a bummer. And now, seeing this gameplay of the boss fight, it feels like it was written by an edgelord middle schoolers. And that's not... There's no way of twisting that into being a good thing. Like, the dialogue is super duper cringe and bad. And I'm hoping that was just a particular bad showing for it. And that the rest of the game is good, because every other thing that I've seen about that game looked good, but this one block of boss fight was terrible. Like, maybe one of the worst showings a game has had to showcase ever. And I'm including the Halo Infinite Craig one, right? Like, I'm not happy about it. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Ew, why? Gross. Clowns are terrible. Also, does anyone even have, like, happy nostalgia for Killer Clowns from Outer Space? There's, like, maybe 10 people who were traumatized as it by a child. Is that reason enough to bring it back in a video game? I don't know. Did we run out of horror movies, like good horror movies, to make games about? Whatever. Age of Empires. Why are we... If you're showing me Age of Empires 4, and it is anything other than that game is coming to consoles, you have wasted my time. I don't care that the Ottomans are in it. I don't care that they added new trebuchet mechanics or whatever. If it's not on console, don't show it at a showcase. I'm not interested. Kojima announced that he's doing a podcast. Why? Why was this at a video game showcase? Is it because he I guess because he makes video games? Is this podcast even going to be about video games? Or is he just going to talk about things that he likes, like he does on Twitter, where he will just, like, go on for 30 minutes about a movie he saw one time? Like, what is this podcast? A Pokemon car. What is this? Why is Pokemon teaming up with Mini Cooper to make a car that, can I just say, is hideous? Like, the colors, I hope it comes in different colors, because the one they showed, no. Really bad. Why do they have awards as a part of this show? It's not the Game Awards, and all it did was waste time on this showcase for things that mean literally nothing to anybody watching it. And then my very last complaint about it, the last thing I want to say about Gamescom, is that, again, much like every single Jeff Keighley show that has ever existed, it was way too long. You could have stripped out all of this bad stuff and a couple of the talking sections maybe. You could have condensed this 2-hour show, by the way, into a tight 45 minutes, and we could have been in and out so fast. Like, we didn't need to be there that long. Complete waste of time. Okay, let's talk about Embracer now. So what did Embracer buy this time? Well, they bought 8 new toys to put into their seemingly bottomless toy chest, although apparently there is a 9th acquisition that they did make, but they can't announce yet because, according to them, it will interfere with the production of whatever game that team is making. Which I don't know what that means, but I'm mildly concerned about it, to be honest. It's so many new acquisitions that they had to create their 11th operating group to handle the new teams, called Free Mode, which is, first of all, just not a great name, very generic. But what I want to do with these new acquisitions is just sort of read a snippet from the press releases that they put out for each of these new teams that they bought, and then tell you what the reality of the situation is, because a lot of these press releases are so divorced from the real world that it is genuinely laughable. So the first thing that they bought was a game studio called Bitwave, which they call a modern retro game studio. In their press release, they say, founded originally as Retroid Interactive in Gothenburg, Sweden in 2013, Bitwave Games is a developer and publisher of polished, high-quality, accessible, and fun video games, mixing the best of the past, present, and future anyone can enjoy. I did a little bit of digging into their website. They've put out only a handful of games, none of which I would call polished or high quality. I have taken several video game development classes in college, and I can tell you with 100% actuality that in those classes, even the very first one where we created video games, there were people who, on a team of one, created more polished and high quality games in 3 months than Bitwave has made in their entire career. So I'm not really sure what the purpose of buying this one is. The second one that they bought is Tatsujin. In the press release, they say, a Japanese studio led by veteran Masahiro Yuge. He was one of the original founders of the iconic arcade game studio Topeland. Known for their shoot-'em-up games, Tatsujin continues the heritage and manages the Topeland catalog of classic games such as Truxton, Snow Bros, Flying Shark, and Zero Wing. Known for the line, all your base are belong to us. So, I don't know what any of those games are. I have never heard of any of those words in that order before. Again, I looked up some of these games. They are not particularly impressive or particularly worthwhile. I've heard the quote, all your base are belong to us before. That's a pretty famous quote, although it's not a famous quote because it was from a good game. It's a famous quote because of how ridiculous it sounds and how bad of a translation it was. So I'm not sure that that's necessarily something that you want to hype up on your press release about having bought the company that did that, but whatever. Also, it's a Japanese studio. They make a point of saying later in the press release that this is their first foray into Japan. So I don't want to hear anybody saying that Microsoft or Sony or anybody else could not buy a Japanese team, because clearly if Embracer can do it, literally anybody can. Okay, the third thing that they bought is a video game accessory company called Geotech. In their press release, they say, established in 2008, Geotech is one of Europe's leading gaming accessory brands, designed and engineered in the UK. Geotech accessories offer gaming and audio enthusiasts the latest and most innovative peripherals to improve their overall immersive experience. Geotech's ethos is to design products with form follows function in mind. Whilst our look and feel are extremely important to us, the fundamental design on how the product is used, played with and lasts is priority. I don't know why I lost track of the sentence at the end there, probably because I was doing a voice. So I went to the Geotech website. I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're probably not UK's leading gaming and audio company. Like, that seems ludicrous, because from what I've seen, their products are lower in quality than like a Mad Catz controller, right? I look at it, first of all, one of the things that they offer is like a PS4 controller that's wired, and it looks like if you looked at it wrong, it would crumble into dust. Like, it looks like it's made of some of the worst material they could possibly find. Like, it is so cheap and pointless. I don't know. I don't know why they've bothered with any of these purchases. It's kind of funny, but not as funny as the next one, Singtrix. I'm just going to read from the press release. Singtrix creator and CEO John DeVecca is a music gaming pioneer. In 1996, John patented and invented the first music video game, MTV Drumscape. Have you heard of that? No, I haven't. Nobody has. Which became a top 10 attraction in arcades. His foundational music gaming patent portfolio was ultimately acquired by Activision for its smash hit Guitar Hero. Let me just break from that for a second. I looked into this patent. It's not a thing, okay? Here's a quote from about the patent. DeVecca Enterprises has claimed that its patent covers not only drumming games, but all musical games, including but not limited to Guitar Freaks, Guitar Hero, Rock Band, and Dance Dance Revolution. However, because its concept is very basic, and that prior, non-patented MIDI drum sets have been used as training tools and as input, the patent's validity has been called into question. This guy was like, I invented the drum! And everyone was like, no, you didn't. But I guess Embracer bought it. Okay, so picking back up from the press release, where he worked with top gaming and development studios introducing new music gaming technology that he couldn't patent. After leaving Activision, Deveka reinvented karaoke with Singtrix and its industry-leading studio-quality vocal effects. Together with his co-founders Al Roke and Eric Berkowitz, the Singtrix team plan to bring the next pop culture musical experience to the world. Through the acquisition, Freemode welcomes a highly innovative team of 5 and its extensive network that will strengthen Freemode's game development and present new opportunities for music and audio gaming products. Management expects that Singtrix will expand its vocal technology platform into a broad range of new music games, streaming, and mobile franchises. In addition, Singtrix's presence in Los Angeles further builds on Freemode's footprint in the US and provides a new major hub of entertainment creator talent in the West Coast. Wow, they are hyping this team up through the absolute roof. And let me tell you, with any level of research, you can find that they are not worth this or being bought. First of all, they are a team of 5 who have created an overpriced karaoke machine, a thing that you can pick up at any Walmart or Target or Goodwill on the planet, and they have added to it really dumb vocal effects like sounding like a robot or sounding incomprehensible. It is a completely terrible product that makes absolutely no sense. They actually pitched this thing on Shark Tank, and it is one of the most cringe-inducing things I have seen in my entire life. I'll insert it here, if I can find it.
Hi, Sharks. My name is Eric Berkowitz, and the guy next to me.
My name is John Deveka.
And together, we're co-founders of the company Singtrix.
Singtrix is the most exciting and revolutionary singing experience that's ever been created. Now everybody can sound like their favorite rock stars with no experience necessary. La, 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 la.
You guys going?
Let's get some energy.
No clapping? It's just me?
You
guys are good and terrible. They're good and terrible.
Warning, warning, bad deal alert, bad deal alert.
Oh, hi, Lori. You got a beautiful smile. Let's get together after the show.
See what I'm saying? Okay, so it's not a thing that I would say is probably worth buying. Secondly, the bit here where they're talking about, we're going to strengthen our presence in Los Angeles and further build on Freemode's footprint in the United States. It is 5 people. This is a team of 5. You couldn't staff a Chuck E. Cheese with 5 people. How are you strengthening your presence in the United States? Like, what are we talking about? Absolutely ludicrous. The next thing they bought was Tuxedo Labs, and here's what they had to say about it. Tuxedo Labs has created revolutionary technology that opens up vast possibilities for emergent gameplay and user-created content. Their hit title, Teardown, has the potential to become the standard-bearing platform for physics simulation in games. Many of us at Saber and our subsidiary 3D Realms have worked with Dennis since the mid-2000s. We are super excited to welcome Dennis, their CEO Marcus Dawson, and the rest of Tuxedo Labs team into the Embracer family. So, this is a team that has only ever created one game, and it's Teardown. I had not heard of Teardown before. I looked into it. It looks like a very generic, just like destruction game that you can find 40 of on a Steam marketplace, right? It's nothing unique or special. It doesn't look particularly great. Like, they say that it does great things with physics, but it's just a bunch of, like, it's just voxels. It's just little tiny, like, Minecraft cubes that they've, like, built into things, and then those things explode, but they don't even necessarily, like, react in the way that physics normally would. Like, you hit it and sometimes they just disappear. Like, it's when they're talking about, like, standard bearing platform for physics simulation. They're full of it. Like, that's nothing, right? It's absolutely not the case whatsoever. Tuxedo Labs has only ever made one game, and that game is nothing, right? Okay, so the next thing that they bought is Tripwire Interactive, and this is the only one so far that is like an actual team. They say this: Tripwire is a unique studio. Since their founding in 2005, they have grown through tremendous leadership and vision into one of the last great independent developers. I have looked up to Tripwire as an example of how to design and execute on games. Saber has Tripwire to thank for many of our own successes, and I am proud to welcome them into our family. So I looked up Tripwire. They are an actual team, which puts them in a category far above everything else that I've listed so far. They created games like Maneater, Killing Floor, and Chivalry 2. Although apparently not Chivalry 1. I don't know who made Chivalry 1. It wasn't on their list of created games. I don't know. These are games that I've actually heard of, and in the case of Maneater and Chivalry, played. They're not amazing games, but they're games that you can play and have a good time with. This is the first thing on this list where it's like, okay, I understand why Embracer bought this team. This is a team that has done things in the past that were fun to do, or fun to play, and in theory, in future, will create more things that will be fun to play. They even say at one point that they're working on an exciting AAA game, right? Which, to be fair, is probably what they would have said about Saints Row, and then that came out and it was kind of a trash fire. So I'm not holding my breath for it, but this is a team that I feel like could actually go on to do something interesting, which, in comparison to the last 5 things I just said, where it felt like Embracer just reached into a bargain bin and scooped up the first 5 things that their fingers touched, and they're like, you're mine now, you're coming home with me. Like, this feels like an actual purchase with intent and like a reason that I can see. Now, there's 2 more on this list that they've made that are actually genuinely really good purchases that even are in a category above Tripwire in terms of like, these are not just like things where I'm like, I understand why somebody might potentially want to buy you. It's like, these are things that are amazing to own. The first of which is Limited Run Games. In their press release, they say, Limited Run is the global leading brand within its niche/business, a premium publisher of physical games founded in 2015 by Josh Fairhurst, CEO, and Douglas Bogart, COO. The company is based in North Carolina, USA, and employs 69 nice persons. In an increasingly digital world, Limited Run has become the preferred partner for physical releases and lives by the motto, Forever Physical. Since its inception, Limited Run has published over 1,000 digital games to physical release. Partners include niche indie studios as well as major publishers. Limited Run is well known for its collector's edition and operates a direct-to-consumer model with a big, loyal audience of collectors, myself included. The company evolved its business model with vinyl records and other merchandise and distributed titles, helping other publishers bring physical versions of their games to market through the Limited Run site and retailers. So, if you haven't heard of Limited Run Games, that's actually a really good breakdown of what they do. Basically, they help out smaller teams or teams that weren't planning on making a physical version of their game to create sort of these collector's editions of those games, or just a physical release at all, just depending on the situation. And in a lot of these cases, they're really, really good like sets that you can buy. One of the ones that they're working on right now is a KOTOR 2. It's for the KOTOR 2 remake that's releasing on Switch. And it looks really great. Like, you know, it comes with like a steelbook and some merchandise, you know, stuff like that. As somebody who likes to collect the physical merchandise for the things that I really like in the games industry, I mean, look around me, fuck. Like, they do amazing work. They do such a great job teaming up with these smaller studios and creating things that could not have existed otherwise. They apparently do have one store in North Carolina, which I guess Embracer now technically owns, although I'm not sure exactly how they're going to operate it at this point. It's going to stay open, obviously. I'm sure they won't just shut it down. But Limited Run Games does amazing work, and so this is a really good pickup for Embracer Group. I am, however, concerned about it because Limited Run has been doing a lot of work reaching out to smaller indie teams and helping them do things, and I worry that now that they are part of Embracer Group, they will instead be tasked with making physical collector's editions for the Embracer Group games, and a lot of the games that they've been putting out are, frankly, not very good. And I don't know that I want them even bothering wasting their time on like making a collector's edition for Saints Row or for like the Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, right? Like it's a waste of time when they could be teaming up with like Team Cherry or MDHR or like the people who they have been teaming up with in the past to make collector's editions for games that could not have in any way gotten to a point where they could do it themselves, right? And so I worry about that, and I also worry because I love limited run games about them being purchased by Embracer Group, which is just not a company that seems to be built for success, right? At no point in any of their operation does it seem like they are doing intelligent things. And I worry that when this house of cards that they're building falls down, which it will, probably sooner rather than later, I worry about what will happen to limited run games when that happens. My hope is that because Embracer is such a decentralized company, that when it starts crumbling, limited run will be able to sort of separate themselves and like step out of the blast radius. That's the hope, but I don't know. It leaves me with concern. But the biggest purchase that Embracer has made in this most recent shopping spree, and probably the reason why you clicked on this video, is because Embracer Group has purchased Middle-earth Enterprises, and it has been reported that in doing so, they now own all of the IP rights to Lord of the Rings, which is not entirely true. They own a lot of it, but not all of it, right? So it's going to take a minute to unravel the mess of what the Lord of the Rings IP ownership is. So let's just start by reading from the press release, right? In it they say, "I am truly excited to have The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, one of the world's most epic fantasy franchises, join the Embracer family, opening up more transmedia opportunities, including synergies across our global group. I am thrilled to see what lies in the future for this IP with Freemode and Asmodee," which is another one of their operating groups. "As a start, within the group going forward, we also look forward to collaborating with both existing and new external licenses of our increasingly stronger IP portfolio," says Lars Wingefors, founder and CEO of Embracer Group. So, like I've said, the IP of Lord of the Rings and who owns what is a mess. It's incredibly difficult to figure out exactly where everything lies. I've done a lot of research to figure it out so that you don't have to. But it's going to take a minute to explain. So, firstly, we need to make a distinction between the rights to the films, The Lord of the Rings, and the rights to the books, The Lord of the Rings. What they now own, Embracer now owns, is the literary works, right? However, so basically, if when you purchase or picture the Fellowship of the Ring in your mind, you see these guys, right? Elijah Wood, Orlando Bloom, them. Embracer does not own them. If you instead picture these guys, that's what Embracer owns, okay? Now, they own the literary rights. That does not mean that they can publish new books. The publishing rights of the books are owned by a different company as well. I don't remember the name of it, but it's like a specific book publishing company who's owned it since Tolkien published the books, right? So it's been literally decades since that's been owned by anybody involved with Tolkien. So the other thing is that they only own the literary rights to certain books, specifically the Lord of the Rings trilogy and The Hobbit. For things like the Silmarillion, the unfinished tales of Numenor, the Children of Hurin, like anything published after Tolkien's passing, they do not have any rights to. So don't expect a Silmarillion game. Although, to be frank, that would be a total mess, and I don't know how they would do it anyway, so it's probably for the best that they don't own it, because I don't want to see anybody attempt it. So, the other, and probably most convoluted part of this, is that they actually do not own any of the previously made Lord of the Rings things, right? The films are still owned by Warner Brothers. See, Warner Brothers licensed the IP of Lord of the Rings from the company that became Middle-earth Enterprises and was then purchased by Embracer years ago. And as it's one of those situations where as long as they continue to make Lord of the Rings properties, they still get to own that IP. And if you remember from the beginning of this year, when Middle-earth Enterprises first said that they were trying to find somebody to buy the IP rights from them, or to basically just buy the company for outright, Warner Brothers actually came out and said, okay, well, we're not selling our rights. And so it seems like there's some kind of legal dispute as to whether or not Middle-earth Enterprises was even legally allowed to sell the rights to Embracer in the first place. So I'm expecting there to be some kind of fallout, and this is probably all going to end up in flux at some point in the near future. So it's a mess now, and it's only going to get worse. Okay, let's just focus in on what does Embracer actually own at this moment. Okay? They own the ability to create games, films, merchandise, stage plays, basically anything based on the literary works, The Lord of the Rings, and The Hobbit. Okay? Warner Brothers seemingly still also has the rights to make films or video games based off of the film universe and the visual language created by it over on their end. They have not given up rights to that. They still own it. Now, if they stopped making Lord of the Rings properties and or were potentially bought out of their contract by Embracer, that would go back to Embracer. But at the moment, they still hold it. Think of it as the same way that Universal used to own, or does still own, the Hulk rights, where they owned the Hulk, and as long as they continue to make things, they would continue to own it, but Marvel was only kind of like lending it to them, and if they stopped making things, it would go back to them. It's the exact same thing, except Warner Brothers still has it. I hope that makes sense. It's very complicated. The other thing is, the new television show that starts in September, early September, that is also not owned by Embracer Group. You see, Embracer Group would now own the ability to, Warner Brothers now still owns the ability to make movies and miniseries based on the Lord of the Rings. And if they stop doing that, it would revert to Embracer Group. However, for some reason, long-form content, video content, like a television show, is still owned by the Tolkien estate. So the Rings of Power television show is not involved with either Warner Brothers or Embracer. It is run directly between Amazon, who is creating it, and the Tolkien estate, who owns the rights, right? So Embracer is not making, well, they're probably making money off of it, but they don't own the Rings of Power television show. They have no say over what happens with it. They do not own the Elijah Wood, Orlando Bloom movies. If you go out tomorrow and you buy a Blu-ray of The Lord of the Rings, no money goes to Embracer Group. They do not get retroactive sales rights to the Middle-earth franchise video games, Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War, the old PS2 games, Third Age. They don't own any of that. That is still owned by Warner Brothers, right? So, the long and short of it is, Embracer can make new films for The Lord of the Rings, but they cannot do so without Warner Brothers until Warner Brothers either secedes the rights or stops making Lord of the Rings content. Embracer Group also has the right, the Tolkien estate retains the right to long-form series like television, The Rings of Power, and also, so Embracer cannot make shows without going through the Tolkien estate. They can... What they can do is, like I said, video games, merchandise, stage productions, or theme parks based on the books. And the reason that they bought it is that with those rights, they can license out that IP to other people to use, which is what they are actually going to end up doing with it. I'm sorry, I know this has been very convoluted. It's a very confusing situation, and I hope that I've explained it well. But basically, they are not going to be making much, if any, Lord of the Rings content themselves. What they're going to be doing is they're going to be allowing other people to create Lord of the Rings content, probably in droves, right? If you go to the Embracer Group website or the Middle-earth Enterprise website right now, on both, you can find links that it's like, how do I license the Lord of the Rings? And you just go there and they're like, give us money and you can do basically whatever you want with it. Like, they seem to be having little to no oversight beyond give us money and then you can make something, right? Which is not surprising considering that this is Embracer Group. Their business practices fall into, let's say, 4 categories, right? They've got the bargain bin, which is what they've been doing with like THQ Nordic, where they're just buying up all the rights to all these games so that if you go and you buy a 360 game, Darksiders or something, they make like 2 cents off the purchase that you bought from a bargain bin in a Walmart, right? Then they've got lazy re-releases like remastered edition of that game, the Definitive edition of Darksiders, the Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning, or Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, where like they're taking the old game, changing nothing really, and just putting it on a new disc so that it can be purchased again, so that they can see like, hey, does anyone care about this? Like, basically just trying to drum up interest in things that are old. They also do the sort of false nostalgia vampire thing, right? Where like the company THQ Nordic that exists currently is not the THQ Nordic of the 360 generation. And I mean that literally. It is a completely different company run by completely different people and staffed by completely different people. They are simply wearing the THQ Nordic name like a skin coat. They're they're skinwalkers pretending to be something that you used to like, because they know that if they stick that THQ Nordic logo at the bottom of a game box, you'll go, oh, I know that, and you'll buy it without thinking, because most people don't seem to know what Embracer Group is, even though they've been doing this for like a decade now. And their fourth thing is, I call it the pimp, right? They're buying up this IP, like Tomb Raider, like Lord of the Rings, and all of these studios that are very small and meaningless and nobody really has heard of any of them, for one reason. It is so that they can reach out to people like Microsoft and be like, hey, do you need a support team to help you with this game? Because we've got 100. Or, hey, would you guys like to make a Tomb Raider game? Because you can license the IP from us and make a Tomb Raider game. Or in this case, it's going to be Lord of the Rings. We're going to get so much Lord of the Rings content over the next 10, 15 years. And I'm just telling you right now, 80% of it's going to be garbage. Now, 20% of it might be good to great, and that'll be really interesting to see, but oh man, just get ready for Lord of the Rings to go down the same crapshoot that Star Wars has gone down over the last little while. It's going to be an absolute mess. I hope I explained that in at least a somewhat coherent way. If not, feel free to ask any questions about it down in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer it. I don't necessarily know if I'll be 100% accurate. It's a convoluted mess. It was a convoluted mess before this, and it's going to continue to be one after, if not worse. And it's only going to continue to be that way until somebody goes around and buys the rights from all of the people who own chunks of it and just sticks it in one basket, which will probably never happen. But regardless, that's everything that Embracer has bought in this most recent round of shopping. I'm sure that it's not their last. They're up to like 120 game teams or whatever, and I'm sure that they won't stop until they're at 200 or more. So I don't know. It's wild. They just keep buying all of these very small, pointless teams, and then just like a handful of really good ones, like, Crystal Dynamics or Gearbox or something. And it's just such a strange business practice that makes absolutely no sense to me. But I don't know. Regardless, if you like this content, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, share this video with a friend if it helped you understand what the hell any of this is. I'm exhausted from having to think about it for so long, so until next time, I'll see you around.